Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk about chapter 5 of Enfoques, which is called Los Viajes. So as you can see, it is about travel and trips, um, lodging. We saw a similar chapter to this in Viva in 101, and I think that one's actually chapter 5 also, funny enough. So as we go through the vocabulary, um, we see words related to alojamiento, lodging. So this is where you stay. Over here, de viaje just means on a trip. So things related to travel. La seguridad y los accidentes, safety and accidents. And then over here, las excursiones, excursions. Sometimes excursion means like a hike, but in this case it just means like different types of excursions you could go on, such as scuba diving and things. As we move on to the fotonovela, yes, I think I remember this one. The maid, whatever her name is, Lupita, I think has a medical scare, and they have to take her to el hospital. Vamos a ver. Here it talks about café. Um, most of the coffee we drink, a lot of it is grown in Central and South America. Over here it talks about El Canal de Panama, the Panama Canal. So that's a little interesting thing for you to look at. When we get into the grammar, the first one is comparisons and superlatives. This is another one that you've seen in, I believe, 102. Remember that comparisons of inequality compare two things that are not equal. And it really doesn't matter what part of speech you're comparing. The formula is más o menos, more or less, and then que. So think of que like than. If you're comparing two things that are equal, you're going to use tan or a form of tanto depending on what part of speech you're comparing. And in this case, you're going to use como as your connector. So these are kind of like saying as blank as. Superlatives aren't really a comparison. They're like picking out one part of the comparison and saying it is the most or the least. Like in high school, when you have like most likely to succeed, those are called the senior superlatives. And it kind of shows you the formula. What makes a superlative is adding the el, la, los, or las, the before the noun. So this isn't saying the beach is more pretty. It is saying it is the most pretty. There are a few irregulars. Same way in English, we don't say more good or more bad. We say worse or better. In Spanish, mejor means older. Mejor means better. Peor means worse. Mayor means bigger in the sense that it's older. And menor means smaller in the sense that it's younger. If you're referring to size, use más o menos pequeño. And then isimo is a way to say really, really. So like grandissimo means really, really big. They call it an absolute superlative. 5.2 is another one we saw in 102, negative and affirmative expressions. A good way to remember these is by the opposite, something versus nothing, always versus never. Remember that once a sentence is negative, you have to continue using these negative words. Spanish doesn't mix affirmative and negative things, like saying she never does anything. Never is negative and anything is affirmative. So they would say she never does nothing. Double negatives, triple negatives are perfectly fine in Spanish. For me, the trickiest one are the forms of alguno and ninguno, just because they can modify nouns, like ninguna persona, algunos libros. So this line, the alguno and ninguno line, remember that those can go directly in front of nouns and modify them. The last grammatical point is the subjunctive and adjective clauses. I call this the subjunctive of existence. So basically, if your setup clause refers to something that exists and everybody knows it exists, then you're going to have a sentence that is indicative on both sides. For example, if I said, I know a guy